What a great group of patriotic people you are, right? Come out here on your Sunday. How patriotic are you? That, or you just hate the NFL? Right? No? Okay. Yeah, it's important that you're out here, and we are thankful that you are out here. And who thought you would be out here? The work never ends for Democrats, does it right now? You know, there are times in the history of this country where it's easy, right? Where our democracy just goes along smoothly. And then there are times when we have to remember that this is something that we work for, and that people have worked for 250 years. And so it's a good burn, right? You all worked really hard in November, huh, for Kamala? Yeah, put a lot into that. God, that was heartbreaking, huh? Heartbreaking November. It was a horrible November. But it was a great November. It was a great November because in this state in Florida, 57% of the voters voted in favor of enshrining abortion rights in our Constitution. Think about that. 57% of Floridians voted in favor of women's rights to choose. That is amazing. And that happened because of you, because you knocked on doors, because you phone banked, because you supported this with your checks and your donations. You guys made that happen. And that is huge, and it should give you a huge feeling of satisfaction for what you've accomplished. So it was a really bad month for women in this country. It was a really great month for women in Florida. Okay? Now, people have wondered since the election, they've said, why did we run such a great candidate like Kamala Harris, and why did she lose? Why do our great candidates lose? When a great candidate loses, it's because what we're selling, they're not buying. Okay? We're selling stuff that Americans right now are not buying. Okay? It might be good for them, it might make their lives better, but for whatever reason, what we're selling, they're not buying. So keep that thought in your heads right now, okay? We've got to run differently. Our candidates have to be different. I want to tell you a little bit about myself. I was born in Connecticut, been married for 24 years, raised 2 boys here with my wife. We've lived in St. Johns County for 17 years. St. Johns County is part of this district. This district has 6 counties in it. The boundary moved 2 years ago. Previously, in 2018, I was the Democratic nominee for U.S. Congress in St. Johns County going north, the 4th Congressional District. Okay? I was the nominee, which means that I ran an 11-month race for Congress. Okay? I have been poked and prodded. My opinions have been out there for years now on the internet. You can look them up, you can look and see, you can read articles about me. I still am who I was then. And what I am is a moderate Democrat. Okay? I have been a Democrat my whole life. I was a White House intern for President Clinton during his impeachment, which was very interesting. And I've volunteered for candidates like you guys have, and phone banked and canvassed and all those things. I've been fortunate to be a candidate myself. This is a really unique situation. I never thought I would run again because this is a gerrymandered district, right? It is mathematically built so we can't win here, okay? But we have an opportunity, a very small opportunity in a special election where we could possibly steal a seat. We could possibly win a seat that shouldn't be up for grabs, right? You all know this. And how nice would that be 2 months after his inauguration in Florida to give Donald Trump a little bit of the business, huh? By flipping a seat right here in Florida. That would be heaven for us. And there's a small chance to do it. And I'm going to tell you, you got 2 really good candidates here, Josh and myself. I like Josh. He's a talented guy. He's going to be around for a long time. He is a good politician. And I'm jokingly calling him Josh from Orlando. Because I'm the candidate who lives in the district and Josh does not. Okay? I don't think it's that big a deal. But I think they think it's a big deal. The people that we're going to have to persuade. all right? The only way to win this race, we are in a 70-30 district. You guys know that, right? 30% Democrats, 70% ain't Democrat, right? You guys go to Walmart, you guys go to Publix, you know who you're surrounded by. 70% ain't Democrat, okay? 77 days from now, it's going to be roughly the same percentage that's going to turn out to vote. It's not going to be a crushing blue wave as much as we wish it would be. It's going to be a same proportion. A lot more Republicans are going to vote than Democrats. It's just what's going to happen in 77 days from tomorrow. So there's one chance. In their arrogance, the Republicans are running a carpet-bagging Randy Not-So-Fine, right? They're running a guy who is a clown show. They're running a guy who is not from this district, he is not local, and he is a train wreck, okay? So we have a chance that the people of this district will look at the ballot and say, you know what, there's a local moderate Democrat, I could vote for this guy. That's our chance, okay? My opponent, Josh, is a progressive Democrat. He's endorsed by maybe a dozen progressive groups. He's got a history of being an activist, and being an activist is great. But it's not going to sell to the other side. The other side is not going to vote for Josh from Orlando, who is a progressive activist. It's just not going to happen. So I'm asking you to make a really sophisticated decision here, okay? I'm asking you to vote with your heads, not your hearts, okay? Josh is going to be an advocate for a whole bunch of things that are very virtuous, and it would be great if they were law, okay? But we are not turning this district progressive in a little over 2 months. The best we can do is turn it moderate. So let's see if we can run a candidate, humbly myself, who can relate to people. I'm not going to tell them the answers. I'm going to tell them what should be good for them, or what Democrats can do for them. I'm going to listen to them, and I'm going to hear them. And I've been listening to them, and I'll tell you what they're telling me. They're telling both of us a couple things. First thing is, Tallahassee's a mess, okay? We're running for federal office. They can't wait to talk about Tallahassee out there. Republicans, Democrats, NPAs, everybody hates Tallahassee. Ron DeSantis and those clowns are not serving us, okay? And they're not serving us in 2 ways. One is education. That's Josh's bailiwick. He'll tell you about that one. Number 2 is land use. Okay? The biggest issue that I've identified from talking to people here is land. Okay? We have 3 problems with land. First one is seawater is coming up from underneath us and it's polluting our wells. Okay? If you're inland or if you're on the coast, we've got a water problem. Right? That's the first thing. Second thing is we are flooding streets that have never flooded before, are flooding in light rains. Right? You guys see the orange cones every day. Okay? We have to harden our shores. Our power goes out when the wind blows. Okay? What's going on in Tallahassee with our utilities? Okay? Third thing is we have a lot of farmland in this district. And they are plowing under the farmland. You see it on your drives every day. They are plowing under fields, and instead of planting corn, instead of planting potatoes, instead of planting tomatoes, they are planting tract houses. Okay? That is an unsustainable economic model for this district. Okay? That is not sustainable. Our young people want to own houses. Our young people want to own farms. Our young people want to own businesses. We have created an economy where half the people are driving Ubers, taking the other half of the people to the airport. That is unsustainable. Young people in this country, and I got 2 kids in college, I don't fear for our youth in terms of their resolve. Our kids are strong, they are great, they are patriotic. Both my boys are in ROTC, okay? They love their country. The kids out there love their country. You might not see them, but they're in a way. Okay? But what they want is jobs that have honor and respect and dignity. And we're getting away from that. We have to have an economy that works. We have to have insurance reform on the national level, where national flood insurance is fully funded by the Congress, so it's not coming up to renew all the time, where people know that they can get their flood insurance benefits. This idea of a state rubric of insurance so that insurers can collect your policies and then leave your state and only operate in states that don't have losses. We can't allow that to continue. We have to have federal insurance reform, okay? Joe Biden's Build Back America plan was great. We need that infrastructure here. We need to make Daytona the industrial center of this district instead of plowing under our fields and our swamps, okay? Work on the harbor, work on the infrastructure of the airport, make that the economic engine. Have Bethune-Cookman be a world-class university there, the HBCU, okay? These are the things we can do. Meet people in this district where they are, listen to them instead of telling them what they need, okay? Running a good, clean race and doing what we're doing, which is have very good Democratic candidates that are coming out and contesting all the elections that we have. Because that's how we're going to grow, is by people having good, charismatic, vocal Democrats who are raising money and spending it in this environment. Okay? That's what helps all of us. So I'm asking you to do something really sophisticated. Vote with your head, not your heart. Don't think about who you like the best. Think about who those people in line with you at Publix, which one of us, me or Josh, which Democrat they're more likely to vote for.
What's your last name?
Selmont, S-E-L-M-O-N-T, okay? Alphabetically before him. First in the alphabet and first in your heart, right? Okay?
Nice try.
Okay? So again, thank you guys for coming out. You are so patriotic to do this, and we can make a difference in this country if you all go out and vote. Thanks a lot.
My name is Josh Weil. I'm your next U.S. Congressperson from Florida 6th District. This has been an incredible campaign, right? I'll be honest, as someone who had run once before, have a tremendous amount of connections, sit on boards of progressive organizations here in the state. When I first saw after the election that Mike Waltz was going to be National Security Advisor, I thought to myself, that's going to be an interesting race to watch. Yeah. And then about a day or so later, when I saw how the Trump administration was going to manage their dissolution of the Federal Department of Education, right? When I saw how they were going to deal with the obvious infrastructure problem that occurs, right? When you have a department that is currently connected to over 95,000 public schools, and you're going to eliminate it, and you're going to shift those responsibilities to other departments that are not connected to over 95,000 public schools, right? How do you get that done? And a couple days after the election, they put it in writing that they are going to disconnect the federal funding from the schools that it currently goes to, and they are going to give it lump sum to the state so the governors can determine which schools that money goes to. Nowhere in the country is that a more dangerous threat to the schools and to the children we are trying to educate than in Florida. Florida is already 50th in the nation in per student funding, right? It is at the bottom in teacher salaries, which is what happens when you don't fund it. We require that federal supplemental funding for our schools to survive. With it, we are stretched saran wrap thin. Without it, we are going to see school closures, school consolidations. We are going to see the just utter destruction of our statewide private school system, which is, to be honest, what we know the Republicans have been working towards for years now. It's the reason why the system is the way it is. And when I saw that, it went from, for me, it went from, wow, that's going to be an interesting race to watch, to that's a race where we need to make sure people understand what's going on. It's not going to matter, if you have a red hat or a blue hat on. Your child's education is at risk. This is not a partisan issue anymore. This is going to impact everyone. Nobody wants bad schools or school closures for their kids. right? And honestly, it's been one of the most popular things when I've spoken to Republicans while we've been out canvassing and campaigning for this last month. This is a red district. So even if we're targeting Democrats, we can't go through neighborhoods without running into Republicans. And they are concerned. They are worried about their schools. They are worried about their kids. They are worried about their grandkids, right? They already have got buyer's remorse. They asked for lower grocery prices and they got the Gulf of America, right? It's already not turning out the way they thought it would be. And now they have real concerns about their kids and their future. And we have to protect them. We have to fight for our future here in Florida because, as Jess mentioned, Tallahassee ain't doing it. The answers ain't coming from there. So we started a campaign. I launched this campaign basically the morning after Ron DeSantis put out his little press release at 4:59 p.m., like right before end of business in that Thanksgiving week, saying that candidates would have 10 days to file and create their campaigns and get in, and that we'd have this whirlwind, real quick special election on April Fool's Day. God, they love trying to keep voter attendance down. And, I'm a public school teacher. I'm a single father with 2 kids. I don't have $10,440 to write a check to enter a campaign. So we formed the campaign. We got online. We got on Blue Sky, and we fundraised. And within a little over 9 days, we raised over $11,000 to make sure that I was on the ballot and we had a Democrat who could get out and message in this district and beat Randy Fine. Since then, my campaign has raised over $250,000 in this race. Okay? And that is important. Okay? The Republicans like looking at this district and saying it's R plus 32. Randy Fine was interviewed the other day. They asked him, how is he going to pivot, or what's his campaign going to look like after January 28th? And he laughed at him. He said, campaign? He goes, it's over after January 28th. He goes, it's an R plus 32. Dems can't win. It's an R plus 32 when a candidate, even as great as Bishop Stockton was, raises $34,000. When there's no support coming from the state, when there's no support coming from the federal party, right? And you're left trying to build and gain that traction in a really crowded election landscape. It was incredibly difficult, and he was outraised 100-1 by Mike Waltz, okay? The Republicans, they may not have morals, they may not have integrity, but damn do they have money, right? And messaging ain't free, okay? 2 years before that, there wasn't even a Democrat in this race to challenge Waltz. Before that, the previous Democrat only raised $24,000, outraised by a magnitude of 100-1 again. The last time that we had a Republican with competitive funding was in 2018 when it was an open seat after Ron DeSantis left it. And in that race, when Democrats were funded competitively and had the money they needed to get their message out in this district, in the November election, it was R plus 12. That's a big difference. That is a 20-point difference in terms of how you want to view this district and what is possible here. Okay? And this ain't November. This is April 1st. Bishop Stockton got 143,000 votes in November. If y'all do the same work, the same amazing job you did in October, if you do it again in March and get all those Democrats out, 143,000, we win 80-20. We win in a landslide. They're not getting that many people out to vote on April 1st, especially without a top-of-the-ballot candidate, right? This is not people excited to vote for Donald Trump and Randy Fine is the next space down, so they're already there. You have got to wake up in the morning on a Tuesday and want to work into your schedule to drive out to your polling location and wait in line to vote for one person, and that one person is Randy Fine. He's not that popular among the Republicans. Right? Even in the conversations we've had, they don't know him, and if they do, that's even worse. We have an opportunity here in a special election to seize a seat and flip the House in U.S. Congress. Right now, it is 219 to 215. The Republicans have a 4-seat advantage, and Donald Trump has nominated 4 U.S. Congresspeople to his cabinet. Come January 21st, it is 215 to 215. Deadlocked. 4 races. We have Gay Valamon putting in the work and doing her job over in District 1 in the Panhandle. We have this race right here. And after we're done, after we take the lead in the House on April 1st, the next 2 special elections are in red districts in Oregon and New York, which is fantastic news because you were talking about 2 states that have incredibly strong infrastructures in their Democratic Party, incredibly strong statewide Democratic parties that get the opportunity to focus all of their time, all of their resources, and all of their people on one winnable race. By the end of 2025, we are going to have taken back the House, and Hakeem Jeffries is going to be our Speaker. Okay? Now, I know, right, I keep hearing that progressive candidates aren't popular. I don't understand that message. Maybe it's because I'm a progressive. You know, I look around the landscape and popular. We go to a ton of these meetings. You know, the name I keep hearing everyone ask when we go to a DC meeting, how do we get Maxwell Frost? You know, that famous moderate from Orlando. Anna Eskamani, Maxwell Frost. These are some of the most popular Democrats that we have in office in Florida. Okay? And they didn't get that way because they were willing to concede space on what they believe is right. They weren't willing to, you know, move into the middle and be more like Republicans. They said, this is what the people need, and we are willing to serve them like that, everyone, no matter what. And they've become more popular over time, even with Republicans in their district as a result of it. Okay? The most engaging and inspiring statewide candidate we've had in over a decade was Andrew Gillum, right? An incredible progressive who lost the governor's race by a razor-thin margin in 2018, right? And this was a man who performed incredibly well in red districts, right? For example, in Congressional District 4 in 2018, the local U.S. congressional nominee for the Democratic Party received 32% of the vote. Andrew Gillum in that exact same district received 47% of the vote. He outperformed the Democratic candidate for Congress by 15 points that year. 50,000 people showed up in that district voting for John Rutherford and Andrew Gillum, which tells you, right? They don't see the difference between a Republican and a Republican Light. You offer them full flavor or Bud Light version, they're going to take the full flavor every time. But you show them something a little different. You show them someone inspiring, someone who wants to make change and improve their lives, and they're willing to listen. Right? And that's what we've had in this campaign. It's been an amazing, I said 2 months earlier because it feels like 7. Its filing deadline was December 7th. It wasn't that long ago, but man, we are out there every day in this district, and whether it's Democrats, Republicans, or independents, man, they are scared for the future, they are scared for the kids, and they want someone who will work for them. And on April 1st, we know that they are not going to show up for Randy Fine. Randy Fine has proven to the world that he doesn't care about anyone other than Randy Fine. He just pledged to serve people a whole state Senate district in Brevard County, and then filed for a new race before he was even sworn into that one they elected him to. His word's good for nothing with the voters. They don't like him, they don't want him. And he's willing to sit back and let us gain the longest runway possible on our messaging. Let us get out to voters, let us knock doors, let us get the turnout that these 6 incredible DECs across this district have shown they can do. The only way Randy Fine is going to Congress is if he signs up to chaperone his kid's 10th grade field trip. All right. Thank you all.
Okay, who has some questions? Yes, sir.
April 29th. One of you is going to win. One of you not.
January 29th. Well, January 28th is primary.
Sorry, January 29th.
28th.
On January 29th?
29th.
Oh, on the 29th, one of us is the candidate nominee. Yes, I'm sorry. Apologize.
29th. Which one of you is going to support the other that didn't win?
Oh, we're going to support each other, of course. Yeah. We're Democrats. Oh, I'm sorry. I mean, we're here to support the Democratic Party, and we're here to party build. And as I said before, Josh has a great future in the Democratic Party, and what he's doing is great. I just hope he doesn't. The biggest mistake I made in my first campaign was in the last month. My eyes got wide, and I pushed all my money into the center of the table. And you got to keep some money for the next race.
I just didn't want to see you going
so,
to get Clinton for spring break.
Yeah. so yeah.
Without you.
But yeah, so I think we're party building here. Yeah.
Agnes.
We know that a big part of the race, even in an area like this, is TV ads. Which one of you have already looked into that and figured you can do it? Because that is money.
Yeah, we have our pricing for them. One of the issues with reaching out to Republicans is that they've had such a stronghold in digital messaging through television and ads, 24-hour misinformation broadcast out there for the last 2 decades. Right? As a teacher, I can tell you it is far easier to teach something than reteach something. When someone has old ideas and misconceptions, it is a lot harder to break through those. And we're not going to be able to do it with digital ads. We have to have an incredibly strong campaign with a large ground game that is getting out there and reaching people for real conversations. Will we buy TV ads? Absolutely, if for nothing else, to block up space and limit the amount of time that Randy Fine is going on. Because Randy Fine don't play well in person. He ain't going out and talking to voters. He ain't meeting with people. He's very happy to just sit back and let the TV ads run. Thankfully we are on pace. This is a campaign that has a trajectory of raising $3 to $4 million over the course of it. We are going to be live, and we don't have to make choices about whether or not we want TV ads. Much like the Republicans, we'll be able to do everything.
Both of our campaigns are very well funded, and we shot TV ads in December. They're on our website. The first 3 of the series are on the website, so you can check them out if you go to the website. This, by dint of the calendar being one of the only races in the country, we're going to attract a lot of investment, a lot of donations from around the country. So it'll be a very sophisticated race that you see from whichever one of us wins the primary. The primary is different. The primary is, maybe 9,000 voters, 10,000 voters if we're lucky. And it's really retail politics, door to door, meeting Democrats where they are and talking to them and getting the word out among the Democratic organizations of this disparate district. But yeah, when we get to a general election, it's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of bombast, a lot of media, and it's going to be effective.
Sybil.
What is the availability of public service announcements for your use, both in the primary and in the general?
Political advertising is regulated very specifically by the FEC in terms of the type of public messages that can be made available or space. There are some PACs or not-for-profits, depending on their classification, if they're like 501 or 503 or 504, that are able to message, but they're not allowed to message for candidates in particular. As candidates, we have to pay for whatever messaging we get. Unfortunately, that is an advantage, and it's been one of the reasons why it's been so difficult for Democrats to gain traction in our rural communities across the state, is that the state party hasn't supported down-ballot Dem candidates in rural counties for a long time. And if you are a candidate, there is a much more limited playground where you are allowed to speak to voters than there is if you are an elected official. So if you are an elected official, you can speak at schools, you can speak at public events, you can, as an elected official, you get the opportunity to message as part of those public service announcements. So as a political candidate, you are restricted much more, unfortunately.
Are you restricted from community-based organizations?
It depends. We can show up and engage in terms of whether we can be invited, sponsored, fundraised for or other things. It depends on their classification and the way they filed with the IRS. So some we can, some we can't.
Aloha. Oh, sorry.
Okay. The FDP, their job is voter turnout. So get out the vote, right to vote, all that stuff should come from the state party and from the local DECs. So we're hoping that will encourage turnout. When I ran in 2018 in Jacksonville, the Chamber of Commerce did not schedule a debate for U.S. Congress. Okay? They did not schedule a debate. I sat down for a 2-hour interview with the Florida Times-Union, major newspaper. At the end of the interview, the reporter said, "Wow, you're the best candidate I've interviewed in a long time. They'll run a paragraph." He was wrong. They ran a sentence. Also in the 4th District, George Selmont is running against John Rutherford. That's all they ran. This is, we are in a, what's the state house? 87, 13 division, Republicans to Democrats.
Well, the state legislature?
Yeah, the state
It's
legislature.
like 73-27.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Supermajority.
Yeah, and to the victors go the spoils, and they have gerrymandered this state, and they have divided it up, and we have a very difficult district here that is 455 square miles with a national forest in the middle of it and no media center. They've made it as hard as they can, but we're Democrats. We build things. The other side breaks things. We build things. So we'll win this.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, Aloha first. Sorry.
Yes.
Wait, Aloha. That's her name, actually. I'm not just saying
So, signage is important. We need to know your name. I've seen 2 signs on them. I haven't seen any. I'll pay for a 4x4. For 2 4x4s you got. I'll pay for 2 for you. There's some important locations where they need to be, so if you want that, you need to get your name out there.
Oh, that's wonderful.
If other people want to do the same, one thing, but I will commit to 2 4x4s.
Well, we're being a very green campaign, and we are limiting our paper, and we are trying to reach people as much as we can digitally and where they are, and keep a low impact and practice what we preach. So please don't interpret not seeing stacks and stacks of flyers from us from either not having money to have stacks and stacks of flyers or for not caring about you. But we figure we're meeting you all here today, we're talking to you all here today, and we're not filling up the landfills. So that's just kind of our philosophy. But yes, it's important to brag. And I'll tell you, Josh is, and this is not a backhanded compliment, Josh is very good about bragging, and we do not brag. No, not backhand at all. We don't brag well as Democrats. We do the hard work, and we're quiet about it. And one of the things why people are really alighting to this guy is because he is a fierce, proud Democrat. He's out there, and he's bragging. And that is good for us as a party. This is a party-building thing that we are doing here, this campaign.
He's not eating.
Yeah, and it's 2 good candidates, and we need more good candidates.
Yes, I watch MSNBC daily,
Oh,
and
good for you.
Trump is advertising for flying. Now, when one of you 2 good men is going to be our candidate, do you think the Democratic National Party will contribute to help you guys?
It would be fantastic if they did, but as I said earlier, we can't bank on anyone coming to save us, right? We have to save ourselves at this point. We need a campaign that is strong enough to fundraise on its own, that can build a ground game on its own, that can get out to voters on its own. And if they come in and strengthen that, that will be fantastic. But if we wait for them to save us, we will drown once again.
I would hope that groups like Emily's List or DCCC would see this race and see what's happening here and the engagement and the money that combined we are spending here and realize that they need to compete in districts like this.
Rod?
So hopefully, good question.
I'm sorry, I keep cutting you off. Rod?
If elected, what are your first and second priorities? What are you going to do, both of you?
I'll start. First thing is I'm very interested in the Agriculture Committee as a committee assignment. I think that this is a district that, as I said before, has a lot of land use issues, and I think that that's where I would like to be seated. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I'd love to promise you all the legislation on day one that I'm getting passed in this country. What I have found is that hard work solves most problems. And, I am not going to go there and be Marjorie Taylor Greene. I'm not going to go there and be a distraction. I'm going to be somebody who goes there and works hard and networks and listens to the people in the district, and instead of telling them what they need, presents what they want. So I'll be an advocate of the people in the district starting day one.
Yeah, first day in Washington, I mean, the most important thing is being present for votes. It is such a narrow house that we have to make sure our Dems are there every day when votes are taken and legislation is processed, because we cannot afford to have sick days where they can pass things through with the tiniest majority. So yeah, my day one initiative is co-sponsor this session's version of Medicare for All and make sure that I'm present for all the votes.
Questions? Yes, ma'am. Kathleen.
I have a couple things that I'm really concerned about, and I'm a retired librarian. The state of New Jersey passed a law saying that librarians were protected from being sued for choices of books that are in libraries where, of course, they're supposed to present both sides of an issue. And the other thing I'm really concerned about is all of the lies and the internet that perpetuates them, and that unlike print media, they have no, it's okay. It's not okay in the print, you wind up in court. You do on the internet, you can say anything. And ISIS is using it to recruit people. We have to find a way to police the internet.
Well, firstly, I'm not aware of that library issue that you talked about, or that legislation, but libraries are so important, as I think everybody knows, and people take for granted how important libraries are in the community. And obviously, we have to do everything we can support libraries and librarians. And when it comes to the internet, I'm a real free speech guy. And, my concerns about regulating the internet are really around people's personal data and consumerism, people being ripped off on the internet. I think those are really the biggest issues. When it comes to censoring the internet, I think that the more free speech we have, the better. I think that the bad speech does filter out and the good speech rises to the top. The good ideas do rise to the top. So I'm very dubious about banning speech on the internet or controlling speech on the internet. But I am very in favor of policing the internet in terms of people being ripped off and their personal information being bought and sold.
Yeah, I agree. In lots of areas, you see, and it tends to be Republicans, who they say something absolutely horrible or hateful or patently false, and then they get suspended or banned on an online platform, and they scream about their free speech. But the thing is, is if a Discord group or a Facebook page or someone blocks you, they're not violating your free speech. They just don't want to hear you anymore. Your free speech is violated when the government, when the sovereign entity comes down and prevents you from speaking. And upon election, that's what either of us would be. And so that does become the area where, stepping in or banning really is a First Amendment issue. The bigger issue, and it goes whether it's internet or whether it's books, accessing information needs to be free. And as a parent of two young boys, probably the most disproportionate part of my budget since they were born have been on books. I buy them absolutely anything they want to read. As a result, they are voracious readers. They read all the time. And, if there's something that I think is questionable, then it's not my job as a parent to filter in what they are taking in terms of media or information. It's my job as a parent to make sure that they are capable of thinking critically and understanding what they are receiving. If we filter out what we allow access to, we absolutely cripple the next generation's ability to have critical thinking skills. And there is nothing the Republicans would love more than a voting populace that is unable to think for themselves in the next generation.
Could I just add one add on to that? Remember, 8 years ago when Donald Trump won, oh my God, the internet, it's this cesspool, the internet, right? Well, Joe Biden won. It was the same internet, Joe Biden won. So, watch out blaming, the internet for everything. Yes, it can be a cesspool, but, it was horrible when Trump won, but then when Joe Biden won, it's the same internet. And now the Kamala lost, so So just try and keep that in mind. It's not, you know.
It
Question?
is both the most amazing tool, right, that in our pockets we have access to the entirety of human historical accumulated knowledge,
And Wordle.
and at the same time it is like it is both things, and it's something that, you know, really we need to not just become better at managing, but we need to make sure that people have the ability to manage. You know, I think when we're seeing what youth are getting engaged with online, it is because they are youth without supervision, because working families having to work 2-3 jobs are unable to be there to provide that support for the kids. You know, if we did a better job of having a social infrastructure and supporting our families, there would be less concern about what the kids are doing when you're not watching.
Agnes?
Excuse me. Earlier, you said that Jane Stockton, who
Yep.
ran, got a good percentage of the vote. And you said if we get that much,
The number, not percentage.
the number, sorry, you're right, not me, that could make it, so you've already looked at that and seen what the hot spots are, let's say for Democrats.
Yeah. The again, so I have been my conservative estimate for voter turnout on this. You know,
He said he's a conservative. You heard it.
my conservative estimate is 25 to 40% in terms of total voter turnout. That would require 90,000 votes to win. When the Republicans like Aaron Baker or Randy Fine are talking, they're saying that they're going to win with anywhere from 12 to 30,000 votes. In perspective, Bishop Stockton just got 2 months ago 143,000 votes. They are not trying. They are organizing to get to a number that they don't think we can surpass. And with the fundraising that we've been able to do in the campaign we're putting together, we are able to organize at a number much, much higher than that. We don't need all 143,000. If we got it, we would win in an absolute landslide.
They think we're sitting back and being quiet.
Yeah, they think we're beaten. And they're wrong.
More Republicans vote in this district than Democrats. And 2 months from tomorrow, more Republicans are going to vote than Democrats in this district. So it's just, I don't like it, but it's what's going to happen. So you've got to, again, vote with your head, not your heart. And you got to think about which candidate is moderate and which candidate is from the district and which candidate are people in the district, not you, but your neighbor's going to vote for. And that's the decision you guys have.
And too many are just sitting back. They're not getting out there and voting.
Robert Swanson?
Yeah, so you brought up before about insurance. It looks to me like the real crisis coming up in our society is climate change and insurance, and it will affect mortgages and everything else. I'd like to know each of you how you would, because that's going to be, besides Social Security, going to be the real crisis that can tumble our society down. How are you going to deal with what kind of legislation?
Yeah, I mean, I think that both the flood insurance program is going to have a backstop. It's going to have to be perpetually funded, like Social Security. We're obviously going to have to expand the areas that are considered flood zones, because as you saw, Asheville, North Carolina was not considered a flood zone, and now it clearly is. And secondly, we have state insurance commissioners, and we have a state insurance rubric where rules are determined state by state, by and large, for insurance companies. And as I said, they're allowed to pull out of markets where they think they're going to have losses. And it leaves us holding the bag. And people's homes are the biggest investment that they have in their lives. And so, we have to have legislation that creates a national base, a national underpinning for the insurance industry, and that backstops it financially so that the carriers can't keep backing out.
We're gonna need a fire area.
Do you want to
Exactly.
respond
Fire
to that?
flood.
Now.
Yeah.
Robert, can you restate your question, please?
Oh, simply, there's major issues, insurance,
Yeah.
climate change.
Yeah, we do need federal insurance regulations, and it has to have teeth. As both of us have mentioned throughout this, the concerns that are brought to us the most are ones that would typically be handled in Tallahassee. And not only have they not been handled, they have been worsened by the last 6 years of the Republican supermajority under Ron DeSantis. So, we need not just regulatory legislation, but it has to have teeth. You know, we have some regulations for things like this in Florida, but corporations are not held accountable. You know, I think one of the most obvious examples is with Spectra. You know, Spectrum was given the contract by the state to, you know, have the primary access to subsurface rights to run high-speed internet across the entire state. And until Build Back Better, when we started getting the extra support from the infrastructure bill that President Biden passed, you know, they refused. They agreed in contract to dig and run those lines to the entire state on the understanding that some parts won't be profitable, but if you do the entire state as a whole will be. And they took that contract, and then they only ran it to the parts that were profitable, leaving vast parts of rural Florida without access to high-speed internet, unless it was satellite, which, you know, is fantastic during hurricane season. So there has to be not just regulatory legislation, but legislation with teeth that can be enforced.
One more question, and then, yes, ma'am.
Environmentally, what DeSantis wants to do, threatened to do, take our state properties and put pickleball courts and motels and make them profitable. What's your take on this?
Josh, want to go first?
Sure. I mean, it's a problem. It's not my number one concern. I mean, the biggest concern with for the environment right now is Donald Trump telling corporations that if they donate $1 billion to the federal government, they will be exempt from all environmental regulations, which is, I mean, that puts us from, you know, that puts us into Mad Max territory in about like 30 minutes flat. That is the most horrifying thing that we could have. You know, we have issues with, horrible issues with pollution already. We have down by the Okeechobee area where we have, where Nestle, for, you know, $1.35 every 4 years gets to drill for water and pollute the air and the land and all the soil around it at will. You know, DeSantis's environmental legislation has been horrible for 6 years. It's only going to get worse. This is why we need to make sure we take back the House, because Floridians need someone to protect them from Florida.
George?
Yeah, Tallahassee's a mess, DeSantis is a mess, and Trump's environmental policy is a mess, certainly. The only cause for optimism that I can give you is look at how quickly people in St. Augustine Beach immediately rallied and were protesting on the streets as soon as that was announced, the plot to put the hotel and the pickleball courts. I mean, it is how quickly people organized and mobilized, and that should really give you, hope for the future and hope for how quickly we can. Next 4 years, we're going to have to do that a lot. We're going to have to put a lot of bad ideas out. We're going to have to stamp out a lot of fires of bad ideas coming from Washington, and unfortunately coming from Tallahassee. And again, the best thing you can do is send Josh to Orlando and elect him to the state legislature and have him represent us in Tallahassee. And that's the best thing we can do, is start taking over Tallahassee, use everything that's pouring into this campaign, and use it to grow where we can start winning some state house seats.
Okay, Ray, this is it.
The question I have is this. Trump is proposing offshore drilling, you know, and oil and water don't mix. It's something else if you do onshore drilling, you know, because if you have a spill, you can get at it. We saw what happened with that big giant spill that we had about 8 years ago. They're trying to cap that, and it was just belching thousands of gallons every minute. And look at the pollution that causes. I mean, there just cannot be any offshore drilling, you know?
Well, I'll tell you a story about that. You go first this time.
You're it.
Yeah, I'll tell you a story about that, which is in 2018 when I was going around for endorsements. I went to a major environmental group because John Rutherford and President Trump were talking about fracking and drilling off the coast of Florida. And I went to a major environmental group for an endorsement, and they said, you know, we'd like to endorse you, but frankly, we can't piss off our local congressman. And so, you know, we support your agenda, but we can't get into this because we'll get a black mark next to us, they'll hold it against us, and we won't get funded. So, you know, they have control. And we are going to have to fight. I mean, this is going to go back to the 1980s and people chaining themselves to Superfund sites or nuclear reactors or whatever, or we're going to have to, when necessary, stand up for our environment.
And you have the final word.
All right. Yeah. So a lot of this is going to come down to constituent services and how you're messaging in the community post-election, right? So the majority of our legislation is done under the cover of darkness. The worst things that they pass through are either at 2 in the morning when no one's watching C-SPAN, or on page 847 of a 2,000-page bill that no one's reading through. We need to make sure that these things are messaged properly, that the local constituents on both sides understand what's happening. The environment is incredibly important to Republicans. They, for over a decade in Florida, when polled, routinely have listed it as their number 3 issue and concern. They love the lakes, they love the beaches, they love the forests. Unfortunately, they love guns and controlling women's bodies more. And they're willing to vote against the third one for the first 2 oftentimes. But they do care. And as Jess said, when people know what's going on, they will organize, they will go out, and you can make change. But we have to make sure that we shine a light on those dark corners, and that everyone in the district understands what's happening.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.